Borrowing costs for governments across the world have increased sharply since Donald Trump's election victory in the U.S. as investors believe the new president's policies will cause interest rates to rise. Emerging economies have been hardest hit, with fears growing that existing trade deals could be torn up. Henry Ridgewell reports.
Many emerging markets rely on cheap exports, much of which are sold to the United States. These countries have felt the biggest economic shocks from the political earthquake in Washington.
Effectively, we've seen investors pulling out of emerging markets. Basically, the Trump victory has hit risk appetite, given his fairly vitriolic approach to emerging markets and free trade, and investors have basically taken a flight to safety.
That's meant a major sell-off of risky emerging market debt and currencies, which have seen big losses against the US dollar. If the sell-off continues, the economic pain will be felt by ordinary citizens.
You're going to get lower economic growth, lower jobs growth, wage growth, etc., potentially higher interest rates for debt service, and if currencies are falling and inflation pressures are building.
Those pressures have forced up bond yields, or the interest rate that governments have to pay to borrow money, and not only in emerging markets. In Italy, bond yields hit an 18-month high as the global upward trend was compounded by political uncertainty over an upcoming referendum.
And I think there is a concern that if bond yields start to edge even higher from where they are now, we could actually see a little bit of a squeeze on borrowing costs on those areas of the European economy in particular that can least afford it.
Mexico's borrowing costs have hit 5-year highs following Donald Trump's election, given his pledge to build a wall on the border and deport millions of illegal immigrants. So could the world see a return to the so-called credit crunch that followed the 2008 financial crisis?
Mexico, you've seen bond yields hit 5-year highs, but obviously Mexico's quite a special case in terms of its close relationship with the US and Trump's particular focus. Elsewhere, yields are still relatively low at the moment, so we're not running into the kind of credit crunch situation.
Analysts say that investors have been reassured by Donald Trump's conciliatory tone since the election, but they predict heavy market losses if he follows through on campaign pledges to tear up global trade deals.